Chaos is everywhere, but steady leaders rise above it with clarity. I'm your host, Schuyler Williamson, and this is the Steady Leader Podcast. Whether you're leading a team, a company, your family, or just yourself, this show gives you the tools to stay calm, think clearly, and lead with confidence. Let's get steady. All right, welcome everyone to the Steady Leader Podcast, where we are teaching leaders that are developing themselves how to bring clarity to chaos so that they run a steady life, a steady business, and certainly a steady team. I've got Colonel Craig Flowers with us today, a great mentor of mine, a big part of my life. And the first question that I always ask on this podcast is because of Colonel Flowers, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But Colonel Flowers is a fourth-generation native Texan and a retired U.S. Army officer with more than 25 years of distinguished service, including human intelligence, international diplomacy, and leadership roles around the world. His final assignment was at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, where he served as the director of cadet activities and assistant baseball coach. After the Army, Craig founded Sideline Leadership, helping CEOs, coaches, and teams apply elite-level principles to real-world leadership challenges through speaking, coaching, and consulting. He's also the best-selling author of A Colonel and a Cowboy, blending military-honed leadership insights with inspiring stories of perseverance and purpose. Craig lives now in Texas with his wife, Beth, and he's a passionate storyteller, loves hunting, fishing, and his family. Welcome, Craig. Sir, I am so grateful to have you here with us and the value that I know you're going to bring our team here.
Wow, it's great to be with you, Schuyler. You can call me Coach now or Craig, either one. I was a colonel, but I know that's hard to get over. I've had some general officers, some generals tell me to call them by their first name, and I just could never do that. But Coach seems like an appropriate title, but I appreciate that. And it's so great to be back with you talking about our favorite subject, because you've never fully developed as a leader. What we know about leaders is we continue to look for a competitive edge to not only develop ourselves, but to inspire from your alma mater, to educate, train, and inspire those that we have the privilege of living with and serving with.
Well, and sir, I do love leadership, and I read your book. I'm excited to talk about it because you and I see eye to eye on a number of things, largely probably because we have some of the similar experiences. But I know the insights that you're going to bring to the team here, they're going to be powerful and they're and meaningful. And what's great about you is you do have all this military background, but I mean, you're teaching all these kids and adults how to lead their teams and even in an athletic situation. So a lot of what I think I am as a team player came from my athletic background, which is where you and I met. We met at West Point. You're the baseball coach there. So I'm excited.
It's fascinating how athletics, graduate of, I did not go to West Point, but I had the privilege of serving there. And Schuyler, you may not know this, but from 1971 to 1974, I lived there as a little boy. And my father worked in the Army Athletics Association. He was a captain. And so I would hang out at Mikey Stadium, which is the football stadium there, named after Cadet Mikey. It looks like Mitchie, but it's pronounced Mikey. Cadet Mikey was the cadet that had the courage, the heart, and the root word of courage is derived from the French word cœur, which means heart. Cadet Mikey had the courage to go to the generals at West Point and plead with them to host the first Army-Navy football game at West Point. And Cadet Mikey was told no. He was told no 2 or 3 times. But his father, a lot of folks don't realize this, his grandfather graduated from West Point. So he had spent time with his grandfather, and he knew that oftentimes when we hear no, it means you're just getting started. That's how we deal with bureaucracies. And even at a place, big bureaucracies, when you hear no, it's often just an indicator that you're just getting started. So Cadet Mikey kept pleading with the generals. Finally, they said, okay, Cadet, you can have your little Army-Navy football game on the plain, which is the parade grounds now where cadets come out in March, but we're not going to pay for it. And so you've got to figure out a way to get the Navy football team up to West Point to play this little game that you think we must play. And the 126th Army game was just played 48 hours ago. And so Cadet Mikey went to his teammates, his cadets, his classmates, and all the cadets reached in their pocket and gave 28 cents or 32 cents. And they actually funded the Navy team. They funded the ferry ride from Annapolis up the majestic, mighty Hudson River, and the Navy football team arrived on a ferry boat, and then they walked up the hill from South Dock. And as they walked up the hill, one of the players realized that they didn't have a mascot, and so they said, "Hey, we don't have a mascot." And they noticed that there was a goat tied to a tree on this farm that they had to walk up on the hill. And so they untied the goat, and the goat became their mascot. To this day, Annapolis has this goat as their mascot, but that's how they got the goat. And the first Army Navy game was played at West Point, and I would say that it's the first time in college football that a host team funded a visiting team. It was called a guarantee game, and you and I have been a part of guarantee games. The first time they paid for an opponent to come up, and they actually beat them. Navy won that first game. So it was the first guaranteed game played in college athletics. What you also may not know is when I lived there from 71 to 74, it was the Olympic trials at your alma mater. And those Olympic trials were right there. In fact, Mark Spitz, who won 7 gold medals in the Olympics, his record, his name is still at the swimming pool, Crandall Pool, right there at West Point, where he qualified for the 72, I think it was, maybe 74 Olympics. But Muhammad Ali and Howard Cosell in the gym at West Point, this is on YouTube. You can actually watch this. They're sitting ringside watching and commentating the boxing Olympic trials from your alma mater in the early 1970s. And I remember this because I was a little boy sitting by my dad, we were just a few chairs down from Muhammad Ali, and cadets were throwing popcorn at Muhammad Ali's the back of his head in between rounds. And finally, the cadets, you should look this up on YouTube. You can see it. And finally, in between bouts, Muhammad Ali jumped over 2 or 3 rows of chairs and started shadowboxing these cadets. And I can remember as a 7-year-old boy looking around and watching, there goes Muhammad Ali. He's going. And one of the boxing matches that he was commentating was a great gold medal winner named Dwayne Bobbick. And Dwayne Bobbick was just beating the heck out of this young 18-year-old. And the 18-year-old's name was Larry Holmes. The fascinating place, but the West Point place that I never attended, but had the privilege of serving, the birthplace of leadership for our great nation, right there on the banks of the mighty Hudson, on the West Point bank of that geography. And it was put there for a reason. Thomas Jefferson and George Washington had decided that, yes, we need an institution, a place to develop leaders for this young nation. But it can't be near Washington, D.C., because as a brand new country, we were fearful that if we had all of these military folks, that they may, conduct a coup of some sort. We had no idea what we had. And so finally, Washington and others said, okay, Jefferson, you can go have this military academy, but keep it away from the power of Washington, D.C. And so they put it there on the West Point, on the banks of the Hudson in 1802. And I love your alma mater. I had the privilege of serving there for a decade. I know the mission statement like the back of my hand. It's been a part of my life for really 15 years. Some as a young boy, and then later as a major, a lieutenant colonel, and as a colonel. And it is the birthplace of leadership for our formal leadership development for our nation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of people ask me, because I had some options coming out of high school where I wanted to play ball.
You sure did.
Mainly football, believe it or not. You know me as a baseball player, but I had options to go play football. And they asked me if I would do it over again, if I would go back to West Point knowing that I was going to go to war and I was, going to go through some of the stuff that I went through. And I can't say enough about how it took this raw, hungry kind of fighter. And rounded me out. It taught me how to think. It taught me how to seek models and to recognize what good leadership looked like and how to find the right people to follow and then ultimately how to be a person worth following. And I'm so grateful for it. I would send my kids there. I don't know if Kristen would, but Kristen didn't go to West Point. So all she knows is being married to a man going overseas every other year. So
Well, I love your wife. She's she's a great mother, great lady, and I got to know her when y'all were dating, and then got engaged. And you know, our nation right now is starving for principled leadership. And I have my I book leadership conferences, keynote speeches, and training seminars around the country. And I'm to the point now where I've got to really pay attention to the calendar so I don't double book something. But whether you're a CEO or a coach or no matter where you are, it's all about leadership. And we're all have the opportunity, not the guarantee, to behave and to learn these principles. People ask, learn or born with. Well, we're born with a personality. You're born with a personality, but character and leadership and service is developed. And I talk about this wherever I go because the great analogy is how many of you have a big audience of 500, could be 5 to 5,000 that I've been in front of. And I say, if I were to ask you about your dog, tell me about your dog. How did you choose your dog? I pause there for a moment. Some just smile. And when they smile, I know that they're the ones that will typically say, oh, we didn't choose our dog. Our dog chose us. Well, why did your dog choose? We saw that dog come out of the litter and we knew that was our dog because of its personality. Well, if you don't develop character in a dog with a great personality, you're going to have a dog with a great personality that craps all over the house. And character is developed. And when I work with organizations, particularly in athletics, I talk about you've got great physical reps. And I've been to the NFL Combine, I think 3 times now, working with general managers and coaches. They have great, and they all say the same things. We're going to be a player-led team. We're going to have character. We're going to have culture. Okay, tell me and they love to say this, Schuyler. They love to say coaching is teaching and teaching is coaching. It's a great little thing that works well during the talking season, which is the prelude to the start of the season, any sports program. Baseball right now, we're in the talking season because it's the winter. And so they love to say that. So when they say teaching is coaching and coaching is teaching, I go, oh, that's great, coach. Tell me about your teaching philosophy. Tell me about pedagogy. Tell me about how you're delivering instructions and information uniquely to different players. I'm not talking about having different standards for each team member. Standards remain the same. But how are you delivering instructions and information uniquely to these unique individuals who have different personalities? Because we all learn and develop differently, some in the classroom, some through individual study, and some by hands-on doing.
I love all that. Well, let me get us on a little bit of a structure.
You bet.
I'm going to give you this credit because I never had anyone challenge me before or a group until I watched you do it. You made a point to teach me and others that everybody should have a definition of leadership. It's not really an option. And because if you're going to call yourself a leader, you have to have something that guides you. And so I'm going to ask you, what's your definition of leadership? And maybe you can expand on why it's important that you teach people to have that in their lives.
Very simple. Leadership is service to a cause. Service to a cause. Now, having been with some of the most elite teams on the planet for about a decade, not as a member, but in a direct support role. I was not a special operator, but I got to I had the privilege of delivering services to world, and then had the privilege of serving at your alma mater. And so I added these 3 words. Leadership is authentic, relentless, and selfless service to a cause. Now, there's an implied task there, not a specific task, an implied task. Okay, what are the causes? Well, we have 6 causes in our lives that we have the opportunity, not the guarantee, to serve. Our faith, our family, our friends, our community, our teams, and the blind spot for the average, which creates a great opportunity, is ourselves. It is not selfish to lead or to serve yourself. In fact, it's a requirement. We have to lead ourselves every morning in order to have an authentic opportunity to serve in those other 5 causes: faith, family, friends, community, where you live, teams, likely teams that you either play on or that you work with, and then ourselves. So when you think about it like that, suddenly you empower everyone on the team. The most introverted, perhaps, the quietest, the shyest, the one with enough talent to be selected or hired, but maybe not quite as talented, as gifted as the other team members. And I'm reminded of a young man that played, and I had the privilege of being one of your assistant coaches for a year during a magical season, 39-14 record. I'm required by law, as you know, to state that we swept Navy for the first time in Academy history, 4 games. The last game was, you could have written a script, a guy coming off the bench, hitting a 2-out base hit up the middle. I'm coaching first base. The most unlikely guy on the team to do it, and loves Scott Camarmi to this day. We share the same birthday. There was a guy on our team that was not the most physically talented. And we, as coaches, 4 of us, head coach and 3 assistants, we thought we were certain that we knew who the leaders, who the captains were on our team. You were one of the captains. We thought we had it down. I can't remember why, but we actually canvassed the team, your team, and said, okay, tell us who the leaders are that we may not be aware of. And I wrote about this in the book. And what the team told us revealed a blind spot to us as coaches. And you all told us, and this is why peer reviews are so important, you all told us that the leader of our team, the heartbeat of our team, is our bullpen catcher, Tommy Halverson, a young man that would never start on the weekend, would maybe get a handful of starts during the week. But he was the most authentic, relentless, and selfless server to our cause. And I can remember being in the coach's office and everyone put their hands on their head going, Tommy Halverson. What we didn't know was that Tommy Halverson was the guy that was tutoring teammates in the barracks, that he was bringing soup and medication to guys that got the flu during the fall or whenever they got it. They were caring, making sure that every one of his teammates got to every treatment that they needed to go to. He was checking on them when they had a loss of life in a family, a grandparent, for example. And, I was moved to tears. I probably hid it from players, but anytime Tommy Halverson walked up to home plate to deliver the starting lineups to the umpires, well, I just had a lump in my throat because we were naive as designated leaders, i.e. coaches, to think that we knew who the most competent or who the leaders were on the team. And we did for the most part. But the most authentic, relentless, and selfless, we hadn't even considered until we reached out to other team members. And the roster told us, it's the guy in the bullpen, coach. That's the most authentic. And Tommy is a great young man today. In fact, I think he's back serving at West Point. At least he was for a while. He's got a great family. And I always think about that. And I always look for the Tommy Halverson on every team now because of that. Yeah. And I should have known better because I came from a world where it was not about rank, where it was never, we were on a first name basis. We knew who the commander was, but this was about competency and service. It was never about the chain of command. Sometimes you'd have someone who was very young, and he was the one that was the expert who needed to make a decision on a certain operation or mission that we were trying to get at. And what I loved about that world is there were no egos. There were no egos. There were no bureaucracies. It was all about the mission and getting the job done. And I should have known to look for Tommy Halverson in 2005. But I got caught up in the structure of coaching and it was a blind spot. And I'm so glad that we took the time as a coaching staff to ask you all. And if you ask, they'll tell you the truth if they know that you really want to know. And for me, one of the MVPs of that incredible 2005 season, which you were without question, one of the most talented, probably one of the most talented catchers. And I'm saying this to blow smoke, but to listeners, you were arguably one of the top 10 catchers in the country. And when we had Tommy Halverson, when you all said that that's our guy, I would say Tommy was probably one of the MVPs of that roster.
Yeah, I love hearing his name. I mean, two things come to mind right away. And one is just joy. Like, there wasn't a person on the team that was more full of joy than that guy. I mean, he brought light into every room, no matter what the situation was. And humility. I was older than him, and I had some experience that he didn't have, and the genuineness and the commitment to listening when you would talk to him, like you would pour everything you had, you'd pour into him, because you could tell that he was the guy that was going to take it all. I mean, he was going to receive it all, use it all. And it's not always like that.
No.
You're pouring into somebody. It's rarely, actually.
You're exactly right. I would go to work for Tommy Halverson. If he called me today and said, "Hey, coach, I need, we're looking to," I'd say, "Yep, I'm in, Tommy," because he is an authentic, relentless, and selfless server to a cause: faith, family, friends, community, teams, and self. And what a story that is, one that never gets told. And so when I talk to leaders, whether it's head coaches in the SEC, where it just costs more, or young CEOs, even, there's a company, Dell, right there in Austin, and I had the privilege of working with their senior executive staff, and I tell them the same thing: look for Tommy Halverson. He or she, they're out there. You've just got to discover them.
Oh man, it's a beautiful. We get into right there, and it would be all worth it. All right, well, guys like Tommy, and you've already said this, they have to lead themselves. And I say it a little differently than you do. I say that you actually don't deserve the right to lead a team until you've led yourself first. I mean, you owe it to that team to walk in your best. And I mean, it's all throughout the book that you wrote that the elite considers themselves as never arriving. And so if you've never arrived fully as a leader, then that leading yourself never stops. So what are some of the things that either you do in leading yourself, or that you teach other leaders how to lead themselves? What are those couple of things that you think are most important? Hey, everybody. I have an exciting opportunity for you. We are looking to grow with Laundry Love. If you have ever thought about buying a business, if you've ever thought about buying into a franchise, look no further. Go into the show notes, send me an email. I will send you an email with all of the reasons why you should buy a laundromat and get in business with Laundry Love.
Well, not only, did I write about it in our book, A Colonel and a Cowboy, I wrote it with a world champion tie-down roper, Strand Smith, out of Childress, Texas, who's in the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. And we use his story, which is an unbelievable one, might make it to the big screen someday, his path to winning the world championship. But not only do I write about it, but I also anchor to another book called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. And I love that book. In fact, I often use that book as a reference when I do executive coaching, or when we work on a 6-month, typically it's a 6-month term. I love that book because you can divide it up into 2 chapters a month, and it's such an easy read, and it does have some sports analogies, but it also gets to the crucibles of life that we face daily. So to your question, how do I wake up each morning? Well, I just did it a few hours ago. First of all, I decide the night before what time I'm going to get up. So when the alarm goes off, that means to me the pitch is thrown, the ball is snapped. I've already made that decision the night before. That decision is done. So when the alarm goes off, I never hit snooze. I just decide I made this decision, and I'm going to honor that decision. So when the alarm goes off, that's my call of duty. Then I sit up and place both feet on the ground together, and I look upward with both hands in the air, and I say, "Good morning, Lord." This is how I do it. And then I say out loud to myself, "This is going to be an unbelievable day." Now, this may sound cheesy, but this is exactly how I wake up every morning. Even if I'm going to go to a funeral. I had a dear friend, I just found out yesterday that a dear friend of mine in Arkansas just passed away. And, I think this is going to be a great day, and I say a prayer for him and his family. And then I stand up and I resist the urge to look at the phone. And then the first thing I do is go downstairs and I start looking for the first leadership laboratory that I can find. That sounds cray-cray. What do you mean leadership laboratory? Well, typically, for me, that little leadership laboratory, believe it or not, is in the form of a chore. Now, people have said, and you've seen the video of the Admiral talking about making your bed as a Navy SEAL and all that, and that's something one can do. That's part of it. But for me, I use the dishwasher, believe it or not, as a leadership laboratory. I hate emptying the dishwasher, but I attack that dishwasher and I keep a smile on my face and I'm humming to myself. I hum to myself and I start emptying that dishwasher. Not because I love emptying the dishwasher, but I know that if I do this, I will have had my first or second, I should say, character rep of the day. Unlike a physical rep that develops us physically, a physical rep is required to play athletics or to stay physically fit. We have to have physical reps. At the NFL Combine, they have to lift 225 pounds of weight, 245-pound plates on the bar, which is 45 pounds. So, and they count how many times can you rep physically 225 pounds. Well, here I'm talking about character rep. And if I want to rep 225 pounds of character, I better start warming up with some sort of character rep. So for me, in the morning before everyone gets up, I'm looking for a little leadership laboratory that gives me the opportunity to get in a few character reps before the beginning of the day, whether that's the trash, whether that's the dishwasher, or something around the house. Well, right now we've got our 3 daughters and their husbands and our granddaughter coming for the Christmas holidays, maybe helping Miss Beth, get ready for that significant emotional time when everyone's going to be together. But I look for a place to rep character, to practice character. And when I talk to these coaches and CEOs, I say, hey, great that you're getting, coaches in particular, you grade all these physical reps, great. Tell me about your character rep plan. And they just stare at me like a hog looking at a wristwatch. They say, what do you mean? I said, well, how are you repping character? How are you practicing character? Because if you want 225 pounds of character to show up on your sidelines or in your locker room or at practice, if you don't have a practice plan for character, it's never going to develop. And typically what they do is they just wait till someone's a senior or junior and they say, you're a leader now, go lift 225 pounds of character. Well, hold on a minute. We haven't practiced how to be a character. When Coach Kelly, Brian Kelly was the head coach at Notre Dame, I was working with Notre Dame and Coach Kelly, shared with me, he wanted a team, that was player led, all these things that, coaches say. And so I had to send Mike Sanford, who was the quarterback's coach, a clip, a little video clip that I had recorded with my phone on the TV and said, listen, this cannot happen on your sideline if you want elite character to be part of your program. And it was a kid out of Florida named Malik Zaire. He was a quarterback, ward number 8, little left-hander, great player. And he had just failed on the football field. He had done something he wasn't supposed to do. I don't know what it was, but it was involving tactics, X's and O's. And he came off the field and Coach Kelly was all in his kitchen about it. And Malik was pushing back and they were having an argument on the sidelines. And what that revealed to me was they had not practiced, hey, here's how I'm going to behave when you fail, and here's how I expect you to behave when you fail. Yeah. And by the way, you have to do it the other way around too. When you're successful, here's how I'm going to behave, and here's how I want you to behave. You actually have to practice that. So it becomes part of, this is how we behave as a team. So you want to give some certainty for what is coming, uncertain times. And you're experiencing that right now in the Austin real estate market. So it's all going to come down to behaviors. And then what happened next was telling, because the next set of downs, Malik Zaire ended up breaking his leg and he was out for the year, and he would later transfer to the University of Florida in Gainesville. But the second, third order effects of not rehearsing behaviors, you can see when the conversation was occurring was the backup quarterback was watching. Yeah. This is how the coach behaves. This is how the starting quarterback behaves. Therefore, I guess this is how I'm supposed to behave. And so that type of poor behavior, starting with the leader and then the subordinate leader, because it had not been practiced, becomes, this is how we behave. It becomes the new standard. And so when I work with organizations of any kind, I talk about character development. What are you doing in that area? Especially with emerging leaders. I'm working with one of the largest insurance companies based in Chicago. It's an international insurance company, and they see this huge blind spot coming, Schuyler, where these emerging leaders that are going to have to take over these roles in the next 5 years, they've had no leader development. So they don't know how to communicate non-verbally and verbally, how to respond to setbacks and how to respond to success other than just giving away bonuses. And you're familiar with a book called Good to Great.
Yeah.
And Jim Collins has written a great book, and I've referenced it in our book. But here we're talking about the elite. In the elite, they only represent 4% of organizations. But what separates the great from the elite is not their skill. It's not. It's their behavior and their character that they practice every day. And so that's how I start my day. And I look for a little leadership laboratory in the form of a dishwasher or something around the house. Could be, I tell teenagers when I work these football camps during the summer in Abilene, hey, here's how most teenagers behave when they see a load full of dry clothes in the dryer. They open up the dryer, they grab their favorite t-shirt, they put it on, they slam the dryer shut. But not the elite. The elite don't like folding clothes, but they see that dryer full of clean clothes as an opportunity that the average won't even consider. And they'll attack that load of clothes and they'll fold them. Not because they enjoy it, it's like the dishwasher, not because they enjoy it, but because it's the right thing to do. And one of the things, back to your alma mater, in the cadet prayer, it talks about choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. Anybody can open up the dryer and grab their favorite t-shirt and run out the room. Anyone can open up the clean dishwasher and grab their favorite Yeti and run water bottle and run out the room. But not the elite see things differently. Their situational awareness, their self-awareness, and then the courage, the heart to act separates them from everybody else.
Hey team, I'm so grateful that you're listening to this video and that you're working on yourself to become a better leader. Listen, if you want more models on how to become a steady leader, if you want models on how to lead yourself, how to lead your team, and how to lead your business, go pick up my book, The Steady Leader, on Amazon right now, and I will give you the models to use to bring clarity to your chaos. Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways we can expand on that. Just as a father, I pray that my children see excellence in me. I mean, one day they're going to be out on their own and they're going to think about me. And I pray that they're like, Dadgum, Dad was always after excellence. And one of the things that I talk to my 12-year-old the most about right now is, how you do anything is how you do everything. Like if you're either going to be an average person or, to use your word, you're going to be elite. And this is not a choice that you can pick and choose where you're going to be elite and where you're going to be average. You're either going to be elite or you're going to be average. So choose one or the other and then start being that. That's right.
And there's a step between that, average, good. I always draw this pyramid: average, good, great, and then at the very top, elite. And someone can be good, someone can be good, someone can be great. But if you're trying, and just because Coach Saban said trust the process, I hear that a lot. Wherever I go, whether it's in industry or youth athletics or in the SEC or in other college athletics program that I work with, I'll say, oh, we're going to trust the process. Okay, tell me about your process. Well, we're going to work hard. No. That's not a process. Working hard is a requirement inside a process. So let's look at a process. And by the way, be humble enough to say to me, we don't have that process worked out. And that's why we're here with you. We've asked you to come in to help us develop a process. Well, now we're going to get to a character rep program. Now we're going to get to the after action review process. We're going to get to the decision-making process. But most will just say, trust the process. And then when you scratch the surface, you find out that there is no process. They just say we work hard, but that working hard is a requirement, not a process. And inside a process, we talk about specific task and implied task. And I love this analogy because your 12-year-old, what grade is your 12-year-old in?
She's a 6th grader.
So, okay, we'll count this one. So you've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You've got 7 Christmas trees left with her. And once she leaves home, she will have spent 90% of the time she's going to spend with you in an average lifetime. Now it's a week before Christmas, so you're really looking at 6. You got half a dozen Christmas trees left with that young lady before the rest of your life you're going to have 10% of your time with. So how do you want that to go? You can ambush her with two very predictable questions when they come home, whether you pick them up or they get off the bus, however they get home at night. You can ambush them with, how was your day? And do you have any homework? Because she's a girl, you're likely, and I have 3 daughters, you're likely going to get a better response than you would for a 12-year-old young man, because young boys mumble a lot. And if you continue to ambush a 12-year-old young man for the next 6 Christmas trees till he turns 18 and leaves the house, you're going to get, how was your day? Huh? Do you have any homework? Huh? Then typically he goes upstairs to his room, shuts the door. The other parent comes home and says, hey, how was Jeremy's day? And dad or mom says, oh, he says fine. Does he have any homework? Well, he said no. And then we yell up to Jeremy, Jeremy, to come down to dinner. Jeremy doesn't answer. So now one parent storms up the stairs, busts open the door, and there's Jeremy with a headset on doing homework. He takes the headset. He's shocked that you're in his room. And you say, yeah, Dad, what's up? And we've been calling you for 10 minutes. I thought you told your mom you didn't have any homework. Dad, this is just Spanish vocab. Well, that's homework. Now get yourself downstairs and let's have a nice family communicative dinner. That's how it typically goes. But if we can do discipline on the front side of that situation, and I would argue in the office as well, how many times do we go into a break room, we're getting coffee or water, we say, hey, how's your day? What's going on? That gets you nothing. The first thing to say to that 12-year-old daughter every day, Schuyler, whether you pick them up or they walk in, the first thing you should say is, I am so glad to see. It happens to be.
Let's see if I got it right. I usually say, I've missed you so much. That's what I try to say every time I see you.
I'm so glad to see you. Now you've got to be situationally aware and self-aware. Now you want to know how their day was and you want to know if they have homework, but you simply say, I am so glad to see you. Now here's the reality. They've got to go to the bathroom. They're hungry. They're tired. And they want to look at that $1,000 device, depending on how old they are, that belongs to you, parent. That belongs to you. It's on loan to them as a communication device. Well, you say that's not realistic these days. You bet it is. You've just got to do discipline on your part, parent. Yeah, you bet it is. They know that I have access 24 hours to their phone. It's not their phone. It's our phone. And I would walk in several times and say, phone check. And we actually rehearsed this. At the AT&T store, we would say, okay, before we turn this phone on, hand me that phone. Before the guy in the blue shirt, I'd say, give us a few minutes. The phone still got plastic on it. Okay, act like you're texting on the phone. She's tapping a phone that's not even turned on or activated yet. And I'd say, okay, I walk into your room and I go, phone check. You just hand me the phone. You tell me your code. If it's not unlocked, I unlock it. And I check my phone to make sure it's being used in accordance with our agreement. And there were times where I would get on the phone that's on loan to her and text back in a group text, hey, Schuyler, this is Kathleen's dad. I'm so glad you all are working so hard on that history project. Great job. Fist emoji, American flag, thumbs up. And then there were times where I would say, phone check, and they would be a little slower handing me that phone. And I'd unlock that phone and I would say, Schuyler, this is Kathleen's dad. Tell me what you meant by that last text or that last image you sent. What is your plan? And the word got out pretty quick at Westlake High School that when you're texting a Flowers daughter, you may very well be texting her father. So if you can frame that on the front end, I'm so glad to see you. Take a moment to go to the bathroom, get something to eat, catch your breath, check the phone, and then let's have a conversation. Then you're going to have a much more meaningful last 6 Christmas trees that they're at home. But that starts with you, one of the named leaders in the home. You've got to do discipline on the front side before you have the opportunity, not the guarantee, to serve those on your team, which is one of the 6 causes, your family, arguably one of the most important teams you'll ever lead.
I'm glad you brought up situational awareness. I mean, because thinking brings so much of the steadiness. And I think in business planning, most people haven't been trained to consider the situation before they jump into training or to planning. When you bring that into leading your team, what are some of the things that you're thinking about, or how are you teaching people in order to lead a team effectively? You've got to think of the situation.
Well, I'm working with a sales team right now that has arguably one of the top, not arguably, they are in the top 10 every year for this insurance firm. And they they've slipped a little bit. And so I've been asked to come in and work with this sales team. And one of the blind spots is empathy, believe it or not. Not sympathy, but empathy. We are so quick. This is the don't judge me generation, and they are the quickest to judge. We're talking about 20-somethings and sometimes 30-somethings that will accept no or accept some argument of why they are not ready to put this insurance product in their portfolio. They will accept that immediately, and that's the end of the conversation. What you may not know is that person, you just happen to call them at a time where they're headed to a funeral, where their spouse is going to deliver a baby, where they're charged with watching 2 grandchildren. And so many times we will add our own false imagined context to a conversation where if we just took time to scratch the surface a little further and perhaps understand from their perspective. The world that I lived in for a decade prior to serving at West Point, perspective was the most important part of anything that I did. I had to practice perspective, whether it was dealing with a good guy or a bad guy. What is their perspective? And if I could understand their perspective, then I could understand where they were coming from, and then I would adjust how I delivered instructions, information, or in some cases, how I elicited information from that person.
Yeah.
But I had to be curious enough and disciplined enough to not give in to my own feelings and to imagine something that's not there. Now, it may very, very well be there, but I had to do discipline on the front end to put myself in their perspective. So when you look at real estate, one of the most important things you've got to do is put yourself in the perspective of the seller or the buyer. And it's more beyond, it's beyond just the sale. You've got to get into that perspective of that particular client. And so many times we're just trying to close deals that we forget that. And your business is a referral business. And if you take the time to get the perspective of the buyer or the seller, which most people aren't doing, by the way, you've done discipline, you've done the work that most don't do. And the second and third order effects, of course, are more opportunities because they tell others. And next thing you know, you become the most reliable, the most authentic, relentless, and selfless seller or buyer of real estate in all of Austin.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to, the character piece, because it's their goal, not yours.
Yeah.
If I'm just humble enough to set my business on the side and help someone with their own personal goals, it'll take care of my business. So I love that.
And I would say that's an implied task. This may be a good time to talk about that.
Yeah.
That's an implied task.
Yep.
It's a specific task is finding that opportunity. It's kind of like taking the trash out as a little boy. Schuyler, you were asked to take the trash out. That was a chore. And finally, sometimes you had to be asked 2 or 3 times to take the trash out. That's a specific task. Finally, mom would say to you, Schuyler, did you take the trash out? And you would say, yes, I took the trash out, Mom. And then it would be awkward silence. And she would ask you something that was implied. Did you put a sack back in the trash can? Well, no, Mom, you didn't ask me to do that. No, son, that was implied. So, Tommy Alverson did that better than anybody. He found the implied task. But if we can get people in any organization to execute specific tasks, and this is how the elite do it, they execute specific tasks with extraordinary accuracy, timeliness, and precision, and they immediately start hunting the associated implied task. In football, this is why I do not like the phrase, just do your job. You hear coaches say that in football all the time. Do your job. Well, hold on a second. If I'm blocking and I've got this guy handled, I've blocked this guy, I've done my job, and I notice that a teammate is having difficulty blocking his guy, my guy is neutralized. I've done my specific task. I've done my job. If I stop there and the play fails and we go back and look at the tape and we say, well, I did my job. I did what you told me to do because I did. Well, hold on a minute. If you would have just come off your block for a second and chipped that other guy, then that play would have scored a touchdown. So I'm not a big fan of just do your job. I'm a big fan of let's talk about specific tasks, your job, and associated implied tasks when they present themselves. And they present themselves in just about every selling or buying opportunity.
Yeah.
What are the implied tasks that nobody else is doing? That's a competitive edge. And that's behavior. That's a mindset.
Hey everyone, I got an exciting opportunity for you if you want to be in business with me. Mission Home Builders is continuing to grow and we're looking for debt partners. So if you're after monthly cash flow, if you're after a guaranteed rate of return, if you want to be a part of development projects here in Austin, Texas, go into the show notes and send me an email saying I want to be a debt partner and we'll get you involved. Well, and you talk about self-awareness in the book a good bit too. That was one of those things that I was trained in the military on, specified and implied tasks. But I had the self-awareness to understand that I'm a big picture guy. So it's not natural for me to give implied tasks. So I exercised one of the tactics that the military gave me in what we call the back brief.
Yeah.
And so I would hand out the what I thought was plenty of guidance. And I say, okay, well, tell me how you're going to get it done. The back brief. Tell me how you're going to do this. And they would tell me, and I said, well, what about this, this, and this? Well, the reality of it is I didn't get angry at that point because I knew that's where I failed. I'm not giving them enough detail, and they're a detailed person. But I had to start doing the back brief, or else I was going to fail as a leader. And the back brief, it gave me the ability to be more detailed because I know what I wanted. I just wasn't naturally gifted at just delivering that in the detail that people needed it every time.
Well, you communicated your vision, your intent, and then and I'll tell you, Schuyler, most leaders, CEOs, presidents, vice presidents, executive coaches, they do not use that method.
Yeah.
They imagine in their mind that they communicated so clearly that it is impossible for this task not to be understood. And then if they will take the next step and say, I'll tell you what, I put out a lot of information here today. We put out a lot of information here today. Sarah, back brief me on this situation. And if we did that at Cadet Activities, which is a huge organization that I had the privilege of leading, and I would discover my own blind spots that I was not as communicative and as clear as I should have been. Schuyler, I never get a call from a company or a university that says, hey, we need you to come in here because we're just too communicative.
Yeah.
Communication has become a problem. We're so good at it, it's become an issue. And oftentimes I'll find that if the leader would just take the time, this morning I was on a virtual call and the leader said, and I'm going to have to talk to him about this. He put out this detailed employee comp for 2026. And one of the people on the service side said, really having difficulty understanding exactly how to put this, in play for both service and producers, particularly on the service side. And he explained it again, and I could tell she still didn't get it. I didn't get it. And he said, okay, that's pretty clear. That's as simple as I can make it. And when I see him again, I'm going to ask him, hey, ask her at the next meeting to back brief you on what the comp plan is for 2026. And what that's going to reveal is, and then he said this. Now remember, he's in a position of power and authority. He owns the company. He said, here's the tone he used. Okay, now, who doesn't understand the comp plan? Do you think anybody is inspired enough? Heck, I didn't even want to raise my hand, and I was on the call. No one was going to raise their hand and said, still not clear to me. I have never had a player or a coach or a CEO run through, let's take football, run through a play and say, okay, we're going to do this, here are the assignments. And then he says this, makes sense? No player in the history of football has raised their hand and said, no, coach, that doesn't make sense. Instead, what they do is they wait to go out to practice. And if they learn by doing, they get in the back of the line. Well, you are our best player. You are our best player. You wore number 31. I've always remembered. I use your number in a lot of different things because I remember it so clearly. If you didn't understand and you're the best player, you're going to get in the back of the line because you want to see Tommy Halverson model what the head coach talked about, and then you'll go out there and do it better than anybody on the roster. But coach doesn't want you in the back of the line. So he's going to say, 31, get up here in the front of the line. You're a leader on this team. Well, guess what? You're going to go left when you should have gone right, and then he's going to rip you in front of the team. And it all started with him not having the discipline to say in that classroom setting, Schuyler, please, I put out a lot of information, back brief me so I make sure this makes sense.
Or let's stand around the terrain board and walk through it. Let's walk through this, right? And have them move the X's and O's. Yeah. So good. All right, so we got to wrap up because I've already gone past your time, but there's a couple things. One, you asked me to ask you about risk taking, that you had something you wanted to cover, and I didn't know if that was personal or if you wanted to talk about it here.
No, I'm gonna talk about it. It's gonna be a baseball story, but here's I'm gonna say this: the most elite teams on the world know one another like no other. They care for one another like no other. Therefore, they can challenge one another like no other. Just the opposite in average organization. They challenge you out of the gate because I'm in a position of authority. I pretend to care about you by asking about your day at the break room, and then I act like I know you and your spouse at the annual Christmas party. No care challenge. And then when it comes to hiring, we ask 3 questions. Can they do it? Will they do it? And will others do it with them? Now, risk-taking. I'm reminded of a baseball game that you were a part of. We were playing University of Central Florida on spring break. It was a night game. I'm coaching first base. Number 44, left-handed hitter, is hitting. His name is Walker Gorham. He, too, is one of the leaders on our team, first baseman. Here's what I knew about Walker Gorham. Whether he hit a dribbler to third or a home run, he was going to sprint all out to first base. It didn't matter where he hit the ball. Even if the catcher dropped the ball, he's sprinting hard to first base. Central Florida is a very good baseball team. They should have beaten us. They did not. Here's what I believe was a backbreaker. The role of a first base coach is not much. It is to know the situation, make sure the signs are received, and make sure you're paying attention to the pickoff move when a guy takes his lead off of first base. It is the employee's decision. It is the player's decision on whether or not, when he rounds first base, whether he's going to go to second. University of Central Florida was a very talented baseball team. We had no business being in that game. I had already decided that we were at the point in the game where we had a lead, but they were starting to get a little bit of momentum. It was around the 5th or 6th inning. I knew that if Walker Gorham hit a base hit, got a base hit in left field, I had already made this decision. There are 2 types of missions in our Army. Be prepared, you might do it. On order, you will do it. I had already given myself, because of the situation, the be prepared. If Gorham hits a base hit to left field and the left fielder bobbles it, I'm going to send him to second. That was not my job. That was the player's read. And I knew by taking this risk that I was about to do something that the head coach was not going to like if it failed. Turns out, just as baseball does, Walker Gorham hits a left-handed hitter, hits one to left field, and here he comes. This is a big man. He's rumbling, tumbling to first base as hard as he can go. And I'm looking out at the left fielder, and I say, if he bobbles, we're going. And Walker's eyes lit up, and he bobbles. And I sent him to second. It was a close play at second, and he was safe. But I can remember looking across at the head coach at third base, and I could see the look in his eye like, that's not your call, that's not your decision. But you know what we did? We broke their spirit with that decision. It was a risk that I determined I'm willing to take a butt chewing out for this because I feel like this game is going back and forth here, and we got a chance to bury him. And we did. And he scored, and we won.
That's so good. But you're thinking ahead. I mean, that's what leaders do. Leaders are always thinking ahead. They're thinking, if I do this, what are the consequences or what are the opportunities? And if this happens, well, what's my next decision? I mean, so much of just staying out of chaos.
But I knew that player, Skybox. I knew that player. I knew he was going to run hard to first. Yeah. I couldn't do that with every player, but I knew he's not the most fleet of foot, but he was a guy that I knew was coming hard. And if that left fielder bobbled, we were going to take this risk.
That's so good, man, sir. We could keep going, but I want to wrap it there. How can folks interact with what you're working with, or how can we follow you and just hear about what you got going on?
Well, I'm on X at J. Craig Flowers, and I'm on LinkedIn, J. Craig Flowers. I had a radio show in Austin for about 7 years on Saturday mornings, and I'm often surprised at the messages I get on LinkedIn, and that people were listening to the morning story and kind of things that like we talked about here today. And I know you're going to have some folks edit this down so it can stay within your time limits because we got a little windy on this one. But yeah, I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn and X, and I love leadership, and I had the unique privilege of of serving with some of the most elite teams on the planet, and then serving at your alma mater, the birthplace of leadership for our nation. It's a blind spot for our country right now, which creates a great opportunity. And I love to serve that cause.
So good. Sir, I'm so grateful. And I appreciate what you brought to the listeners. And we do this podcast. We do everything that we do in our Steady Leader brand so that we can equip good people to become better leaders so that they can, like you said it, do the right thing, the harder right thing, to bring love into the world and bring us all together to a common purpose, not to be divisive or to be selfish or to just be soloists. We want steady leaders as the outcome here. All right, sir, I'm grateful, and we're going to wrap it here. And man, I'm so happy and proud, and I appreciate it.
I'm proud of you, young man. I enjoyed working with you. I'm glad that we're still close, and I'll see you on the high ground.
If today's episode helped you lead with a little more clarity and calm, share it with someone who needs it. Remember to stay grounded, stay focused, stay steady. Follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Schuyler Williamson for more leadership insights and behind-the-scenes content. You can also visit SchuylerWilliamson.com for more ways to connect with me. Until next time, I'm Schuyler Williamson. Steady on.